Anna lived a quiet life on her family's farm. The fields stretched far in every direction, filled with golden wheat that danced with the wind. Her days were simple. She woke early to feed the chickens, carried buckets of water to the cows, and spent her afternoons mending fences or tending the vegetable garden. She liked peace, and she liked silence. Most people in the village barely noticed her. But the few who did notice her were not always kind. Some of the local youth liked to pick on her. They called her Quiet Anna and teased her for being different. Anna rarely spoke back. She kept her head down and carried on with her chores. She thought it was better to avoid trouble. One hot afternoon, as Anna walked down the dusty path carrying a basket of vegetables, 3 village boys stood in her way. They were older than her, stronger, and liked to cause trouble. Their names were Tom, Rick, and Sam. They blocked the path with mocking smiles. "Where are you going, quiet girl?" Tom asked, stepping closer. Anna looked at the ground and said nothing. She tried to walk past, but Rick pushed the basket from her hands. The vegetables spilled onto the dirt road. She bent down quickly to gather them, but Sam snatched 2 tomatoes and tossed them into the weeds. The boys laughed. "Always so silent," Rick said. "What's wrong with you? Can't you speak like normal people?" Anna pressed her lips together. She wanted to say something, but she knew it would only make things worse. She gathered the vegetables as quickly as she could. Tom bent down close to her ear and whispered, "We'll make you talk one day." His tone carried a cruel promise. That evening Anna returned home late. Her mother noticed her red eyes and dirt on her dress, but Anna only said she had been working in the fields. She kept the truth to herself. The next day, the boys found her again. This time they followed her past the river and into the trees near the farm's edge. Anna walked faster, hoping they would leave her alone, but they kept calling her name. Finally, they caught up with her. Rick grabbed her basket while Tom and Sam circled around. "We're tired of your silence," Tom said. "Maybe if we scare you, you'll finally speak up." Before Anna could run, they pulled her toward a tall tree. The boys tied her wrists with rough rope and fastened them to the trunk. She struggled but could not break free. The bark scratched her skin, and fear filled her chest. The boys laughed at her helplessness. "Look at the farm girl now," Sam said. "She's not so quiet anymore, is she?" Tears formed in Anna's eyes. She tried not to cry, but her heart pounded hard. The boys stood around, pointing and mocking. In that desperate moment, Anna remembered the small phone hidden in her dress pocket. Her husband, David, had given it to her before he left months ago. He was not an ordinary man. David served far away as part of a special unit known for bravery and skill. He had told her, "If you ever face danger, call me. Even if I am far, I will find a way to reach you." With trembling fingers, Anna managed to slip one hand just enough to press the phone's button. She did not have to speak much. The call connected, and David's calm voice came through the speaker. "Anna, are you safe?" he asked. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Tree, help." That was all she could manage before Rick noticed the phone. He snatched it from her hand and threw it into the grass. But it was too late. The call had gone through. David, thousands of miles away, heard enough. His chest tightened with anger, but his voice stayed steady. He knew his wife was in trouble. He knew she needed him now. Back in the woods, the boys grew bored after a while. "We'll leave her here," Tom said. "Maybe the animals will keep her company." They laughed again and walked off, leaving Anna tied to the tree. Anna leaned against the rough bark, her heart heavy but her hope still alive. She knew David would come. She had no idea how, or when, but she trusted his words. Far away, in a hidden military base, David stood from his chair. His eyes were sharp, his jaw set. He was not just a farmer's husband. He was Delta Force, and nothing in the world could keep him from reaching Anna now. David moved fast. The call from Anna was short, but it was enough. He had trained for years to respond when people needed him, but this time it was personal. This was his wife. Inside the military base, screens glowed and radios buzzed. David walked straight to his commander, a man named Mason. Mason was older, calm, and respected by everyone. David saluted and spoke firmly. "Sir, my wife is in danger. I need leave right now." Mason studied him for a moment. He had known David for years and trusted his judgment. "How do you know?" he asked. "She managed to call. I heard her. She said only one word, but I know her voice. She is not safe." Mason gave a small nod. "Go. Take what you need. Bring her back safe." David did not waste another second. He packed light, only what was necessary. Weapons, gear, and a small bag. He was ready to move. He climbed into a transport helicopter that would carry him to the nearest airport. From there, he would fly back to his home country. On the long journey, David's mind stayed sharp. He remembered every path around the farm, every road, every shortcut. He imagined Anna tied to the tree, frightened but waiting for him. That picture in his head gave him strength. Meanwhile, Anna was still tied under the tree. Hours passed, and the sun began to set. Shadows grew long, and the forest grew colder. Her wrists hurt from the ropes, but she stayed calm. She repeated David's promise in her mind. "He will come. He will not leave me." Suddenly, she heard rustling in the bushes. Her heart jumped, fearing it was the boys again. But it was only a rabbit that darted past and disappeared into the grass. Anna closed her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer. Back in the village, Tom, Rick, and Sam were laughing together in the small shop near the square. They had no idea what kind of storm they had started. To them, Anna was only a quiet girl with no one to protect her. They did not know who David really was. Night fell, and Anna grew weaker. She leaned against the tree and tried to stay awake. Every sound in the forest made her flinch. An owl hooted. Leaves rustled in the wind. Somewhere far away, a wolf howled. At the same time, David's plane touched down in his home country. He did not waste a single minute. He borrowed a military jeep and sped toward the countryside. His eyes never left the road, and his hands gripped the wheel tight. By midnight, he reached the edge of the village. He stopped the jeep and studied the dark fields ahead. He could almost see the path Anna often walked. He took a deep breath, then moved silently into the trees. Years of training guided his steps. He made no sound as he moved closer. Finally, he found the tree. The sight broke his heart. Anna was still tied there, her head leaning against the trunk, her face pale in the moonlight. "Anna," he whispered softly. Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment she thought it was a dream. But then she saw him clearly. "David," she breathed. In seconds, he cut the ropes and lifted her into his arms. "You're safe now," he said. His voice was calm, but inside him burned a fire of anger. Anna clung to him, too tired to speak much. She only whispered, "I knew you would come." David carried her back to the jeep and gave her water. She was weak, but alive. As she rested against his shoulder, his eyes grew cold. "Who did this?" he asked gently. Anna's voice was soft, but she managed to say, "Tom, Rick, and Sam." David repeated the names in his mind. He now knew exactly who had hurt her. He would not let them escape the weight of their actions. For now, his focus was on Anna. He drove her back to the farmhouse, where her mother gasped in relief at seeing her safe. They laid her on the bed and gave her food and tea. David stood by the window, silent, watching the night outside. His wife was safe, but his mission was not finished. The boys thought they could bully without consequence. They thought Anna was alone. They were wrong. David had returned, and this time he was not just a husband. He was a soldier, and he would make sure those who hurt his wife understood what true fear felt like. The next morning, the sun rose over the fields, painting the sky in soft gold. Birds sang as if the world was at peace, but inside David's heart there was no peace. He stood on the porch of the farmhouse, his arms crossed, his eyes sharp. He had not slept. He could not. Anna lay inside, recovering slowly. Her mother sat by her side, giving her warm soup and stroking her hair. Anna tried to smile, but her wrists still hurt, and her heart still carried the fear of last night. David kept silent, but his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do. Those boys Tom, Rick, and Sam had gone too far. They believed Anna was weak. They believed no one would stand for her. David intended to show them otherwise. He walked down the dirt road toward the village. His steps were calm, steady, and heavy with purpose. Farmers nodded as he passed, but he barely noticed. He reached the small square where the shop stood. The three boys were there again, laughing as usual, leaning against the wall. Tom was the first to see him. "Look who's back," he said with a grin. "The quiet girl's husband." Rick smirked. "What brings you here, soldier boy? Gonna cry for your wife?" Sam laughed loudly, slapping his knee. David did not raise his voice. He did not show anger. He stood tall, his eyes fixed on them. "You tied my wife to a tree." His tone was calm but carried a weight that made the air heavy. "You think that was fun?" The boys shifted slightly. They had expected him to yell, maybe threaten, but his steady voice unsettled them. "We were only playing," Tom said, forcing a laugh. "She didn't mind, did she?" "She was crying," David answered. "And you left her alone at night in the woods. That is not a game. That is cruelty." Rick stepped forward, trying to act brave. "What are you going to do about it?" "Call the police." David's eyes narrowed. "I don't need the police." For a moment, silence hung in the air. The boys glanced at each other. Something in David's gaze told them he was not an ordinary man. "You don't scare us," Sam said, though his voice was less sure now. David took one step closer. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to give you a choice. You go to Anna, look her in the eye, and ask for forgiveness. Or I will teach you a lesson you will never forget." The square grew quiet. A few villagers nearby stopped what they were doing and watched. Tom swallowed hard. His grin faded. We didn't mean to hurt her," he muttered. David's eyes stayed on him. "Then prove it. Go now." The three boys hesitated, but David's presence pressed on them like a heavy shadow. At last, Rick muttered, "Fine. We'll go." David followed them back to the farmhouse. Anna was sitting up in bed when the boys entered. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. She had never seen them look so uneasy. Tom cleared his throat. We came to say sorry," he said awkwardly. "We shouldn't have done that. We were wrong." Anna said nothing at first. She looked at them, then at David, who stood behind them like a wall of strength. Finally, she nodded. "You hurt me. But if you are truly sorry, then change. Do not do this to anyone else." The boys shifted uncomfortably, then mumbled their agreement. They left quickly after that, unable to meet David's eyes again. When the door closed, Anna leaned back against her pillows. Her mother smiled softly and whispered, "You were brave, child." David stood near the window once more. He did not look satisfied. He had seen men like those boys before, people who thought an apology could cover their actions but who carried no real regret in their hearts. He knew this was not the end. He knew they would test limits again. And when that happened, he would be ready. That night, as Anna slept peacefully for the first time in days, David sat outside under the stars. His hands rested on his knees, and his eyes scanned the dark fields. Somewhere out there, the boys were whispering to each other, angry and humiliated. David could feel it in his bones. This was only the beginning. The days passed quietly after the boys came to the farmhouse and spoke their apology. Anna began to heal. Her mother stayed close, preparing warm meals and keeping her company. The farm returned to its usual rhythm, with cows in the pasture and chickens scratching in the dirt. On the surface, everything seemed calm. Yet David knew calm was only a mask. He had seen the look in the boys' eyes as they left. It was not true regret. It was wounded pride. They had been forced to bow their heads, and prideful hearts often seek revenge. David kept his guard up. Every morning he walked the edges of the farm, scanning the trees and paths. Every night he checked the doors and windows twice before sitting on the porch. Anna noticed his watchfulness, and though she trusted him, she hoped the boys would not return. But in the village, Tom, Rick, and Sam met in secret. They sat behind the old mill, whispering their anger. "He humiliated us," Tom said, his fists clenched. "In front of everyone." Rick nodded. "People laugh behind our backs now. They say we were afraid of him." Sam spat on the ground. "He thinks he can tell us what to do. We'll show him he can't." They began to plot. None of them dared face David directly, for deep inside they felt the weight of his presence. Instead, they spoke of fire, of broken fences, of stealing animals. They wanted to hurt his family in ways that could not be seen on the surface but would cut deep all the same. Back at the farm, Anna tried to live as she had before. She walked through the fields again, though always with David nearby. She collected eggs, carried water, and smiled faintly when the cows nudged her hands. She was strong, but her quiet eyes carried the memory of the tree. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky red, David noticed footprints near the barn. They were fresh, too large to belong to Anna or her mother. He crouched low, studying them. His instincts sharpened. "Someone was here," he murmured. That night, strange sounds echoed outside the farmhouse. The chickens squawked wildly, and the dogs barked near the gate. David rushed out and found the pen door wide open. Several chickens were missing, feathers scattered across the ground. Anna stood at the doorway, fear rising again in her chest. David placed a hand on her shoulder. Go inside. Lock the door. He searched the yard, moving quietly through the dark. A branch snapped near the orchard. He turned sharply, but by the time he reached the sound, no one was there. Only faint laughter carried through the night air before fading into silence. The next morning, Anna saw David sharpening a small axe by the porch. His jaw was tight. She touched his arm gently. It was them, wasn't it? Yes, he answered simply. She lowered her eyes. They won't stop. No, David agreed. They won't stop until they understand the cost of their actions. Later that day, David walked into the village again. People watched him closely. Some nodded with respect, while others whispered, sensing tension in the air. He entered the small shop where the boys often gathered, but they were not there. Instead, an older villager spoke to him quietly. They're angry, those three. They blame you for shaming them. Be careful, soldier. Pride makes fools dangerous. David thanked the man and returned to the farm. He knew what was coming. He had fought battles in faraway lands, and he recognized the signs. This was not just childish bullying anymore. This was turning into a war of pride. That night, clouds covered the moon. Darkness lay heavy over the fields. David sat awake, listening to the wind. Then he heard the crackle of fire. He rushed outside. At the far end of the barn, flames licked the wooden wall. Smoke rose into the night sky. Anna, he shouted. Stay inside with your mother. Grabbing a bucket, he dashed to the well, filled it, and threw water onto the fire. He worked quickly, his body strong and precise, but the flames spread fast. In the distance, he saw shadows running away. 3 figures disappearing into the trees. David's eyes blazed as he fought the fire. His muscles strained, his breath heavy, but he did not stop until the last flame died. The barn was blackened, some of the wood ruined, but the fire had not reached the animals inside. They were shaken but safe. Anna came running out as soon as the danger passed. Her eyes were wide with fear. David, they will not stop. What will happen next? David pulled her close. His face was stern, his voice steady. What will happen next is this. They think they can strike from the shadows. Tomorrow, I will show them what happens when shadows are met with light. Anna looked into his eyes. She saw not only her husband but the soldier within him, the man who had faced danger countless times and never turned away. The boys had crossed a line. And David was ready to answer. Morning came heavy after the night of fire. The barn still smelled of smoke, and black marks stretched across the wooden walls. Anna and her mother worked with buckets of water to clean the damage, but their hands trembled with worry. David stood in the yard, silent, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He had not slept. He had stayed awake, thinking of the boys and their growing cruelty. At breakfast, Anna's mother spoke softly. David, what if they come again? They nearly burned everything. What if next time we cannot stop it? David set down his cup. Then we end it before there is a next time. His voice was steady, but his words carried iron. Anna looked at him with concern. David, please. Do not put yourself in danger. He placed his hand gently on hers. I am already in danger every time I leave you unprotected. I will not let them harm you again. That day, David prepared carefully. He walked into the village and spoke to a few trusted elders. He told them of the fire and the boys' mischief. Some shook their heads, saying the boys had gone too far. Others warned him that confronting them might bring more trouble. "They are young and foolish," one man said. "But youth mixed with anger can be dangerous." David listened but remained calm. "They chose this path. I will not allow them to walk it further." By afternoon, David had tracked them to the old quarry outside the village. He moved silently, his boots leaving little sound on the rocky ground. From behind a boulder, he saw them. Tom, Rick, and Sam sat together, tossing stones and talking in low voices. "They will rebuild the barn," Tom muttered, kicking at the dirt. "We need to do more." Rick leaned back with a sneer. "We should scare the girl again. That will break him." Sam laughed nervously. "I don't know. He is not like other men. Did you see his eyes last time? Cold as ice." "Coward," Tom snapped. "He thinks he owns this village now. We'll show him." David stepped out from behind the rock. His shadow stretched long in the fading sun. The boys froze, their words cut off. "You already showed me," David said calmly. "You showed me that you are not men, but children playing with fire." Tom jumped to his feet, fists clenched. "What are you doing here?" "I came to finish this," David answered. Rick tried to smirk. "You think you can fight all three of us?" David did not move closer. His voice was calm, each word sharp as a blade. "I do not need to fight you. You are already defeated. The fire failed. The animals live. Anna is safe. And now the whole village knows who you are." The boys exchanged uneasy glances. Their pride burned, but their courage faltered under his steady gaze. "You call yourselves brave," David continued, "yet you strike only from shadows. You tied a woman to a tree. You lit a barn at night. That is not bravery. That is weakness." Sam shifted uncomfortably, staring at the ground. Rick's smirk faded. Only Tom tried to hold his glare, though sweat glistened on his forehead. "You will stop," David said firmly. "You will never come near Anna again. You will never set foot on my farm. If you break this, you will answer not only to me but to everyone in this village. Do you understand?" For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Finally, Sam nodded quickly. Rick muttered, "Fine." Tom hesitated, his pride refusing to bow. But when David's eyes locked on his, he felt his stomach twist. At last, he muttered, "We understand." David took one step closer, his voice dropping lower. "If you ever forget, remember this. I am not just a farmer. I am a soldier. I have seen men with more power than you, and I have watched them fall. Do not test me again." The boys stood frozen, their bravado gone. David turned and walked away, his back straight, his step steady. He did not need to look back. He knew his message had reached them. As he returned to the farm, the sky turned golden with sunset. Anna waited by the gate, her hands clasped. When she saw him, her eyes filled with relief. "Did you find them?" she asked. "Yes," David said. "They will not trouble you again." She searched his face, seeing the strength there, but also the weight he carried. She leaned against him, whispering, "I only want peace, David. Nothing more." He wrapped his arm around her. "You will have peace. I promise." Yet deep inside, David knew promises were only as strong as the will of those who sought to break them. And prideful hearts seldom surrendered so easily. Days passed quietly after David confronted the boys at the quarry. Anna's farm began to breathe again. The barn was patched, the animals were safe, and the fields shone bright under the summer sun. For a while, it felt as though peace had finally returned. Anna moved through her chores with a lighter step. She collected eggs, carried water, and even hummed softly while working in the garden. Her mother smiled when she saw her daughter smiling again. David stayed close, always watching, but he allowed himself to believe the boys had finally learned their lesson. But deep in the village, Tom's anger had not cooled. He replayed the moment at the quarry over and over in his mind, David's steady voice, the fear in his own chest, and the way Sam and Rick had bowed so quickly. Pride burned hotter than reason. Rick tried to shrug it off. "We should let it go. He's not someone we can fight." Sam agreed. "He is stronger than us. We will only make ourselves look worse." But Tom's fists clenched as he shook his head. "I will not be shamed. Not by him. Not in front of the whole village." That night, he left his house in silence. The moon was bright, casting silver light over the fields. Tom carried a heavy stick in his hand and fire in his heart. He crept toward the farm, his steps quick but careful. Inside the farmhouse, David stirred. Years of soldier's instinct woke him at the faintest sound. He rose from his chair by the window and moved toward the door. The dogs were restless, their ears sharp. David whispered to them, then stepped into the yard. He saw a shadow moving near the fence. A figure climbing slowly, trying to slip inside. "Tom," David called, his voice steady. The shadow froze. For a moment, silence hung in the night. Then Tom dropped down from the fence, gripping his stick tightly. "You think you can control me," Tom said, his voice shaking with anger. "You think you can make me bow. But I am not afraid of you." David stepped forward, calm and firm. "You are afraid. That is why you came in the dark, alone, with a stick. Fear hides in shadows. Real strength stands in the light." Tom's teeth clenched. He swung the stick wildly, but David caught it with one hand, twisted it aside, and sent it clattering to the ground. "Enough," David said. Tom stumbled back, his chest rising and falling. "Why don't you hit me? Why don't you fight me like a man?" David shook his head. "Because fighting you would only prove you right. You think this is about strength, but it is not. It is about choice. You chose cruelty. You chose pride. And that path will always end in ruin." Tom's anger wavered. He had never been spoken to like that. For the first time, he felt not just fear, but shame. Behind them, a light flickered in the farmhouse. Anna stood at the doorway, her hands holding a lantern. She looked at Tom, her voice quiet but clear. "Why do you hate me so much, Tom? I never harmed you. I only wanted peace." Her words struck deeper than David's. Tom's face twisted, but his voice broke. "Because you are stronger than you seem. You stay silent, but you never bend. It makes us feel small." Anna's eyes softened. "Then learn to grow, instead of tearing others down." For a long moment, Tom stood frozen, caught between anger and the weight of her words. At last, he lowered his head. He turned and walked away into the night, leaving the stick on the ground. David stood still, watching until the shadow vanished beyond the fields. Only then did he return to Anna's side. "He may not return," David said quietly. "Or he may. But tonight, something inside him changed." Anna nodded slowly. "I hope so. I do not want more hate. I only want this farm to be a home again. David placed an arm around her shoulders and guided her back inside. Together they closed the door and let the lantern light warm the room. Outside, the night grew quiet once more. The dogs settled, the wind softened, and the farm stood strong against the dark. But David knew the story was not finished. Forgiveness was offered, yet the test of whether it would take root lay in Tom's heart. Tomorrow would reveal if the boy had learned, or if pride would lead him once more down the wrong path. The morning sun rose slowly over the farm, casting long shadows across the golden fields. Anna stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the fresh air. The barn had been repaired, the animals safe, and for the first time in days, the farm felt peaceful. David stood nearby, checking the fence along the far field. He smiled faintly as he watched Anna move gracefully through the garden. Her laughter was soft, but it carried a warmth that reminded him why he had fought so hard. The days that followed were calm. The boys did not return. Tom, Rick, and Sam kept to themselves, their pride bruised and their spirits quieted. David had made it clear that any further trouble would be met with strength and vigilance. Still, David knew that true change must come from the heart. He hoped that the boys had learned something from their failures, from the fire, and from the courage Anna had shown. One afternoon, Anna and David sat together on the porch, sipping water and watching the clouds drift across the sky. Anna turned to David, her eyes thoughtful. "Do you think they will ever understand?" David looked at her, his jaw firm but his voice calm. "Some people take longer to understand. Some never do. But we cannot control that. What we can control is our own actions. You have been brave. You have shown them courage. That is what matters." Anna smiled softly. "I could not have done it without you." He shook his head. "You were brave on your own. I only made sure no harm came to you. You stood tall even when they thought you would break." Her smile widened. "Then I will never forget that. I will always remember to be strong, no matter what happens." That evening, the farm glowed with golden light as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The cows returned to the pasture, the chickens settled into their coop, and the wind rustled gently through the wheat. The farm was alive again, safe and steady. David walked through the fields, his eyes scanning the horizon. He noticed the footprints of wildlife and the paths he knew so well. Everything seemed normal, yet he remained alert. Years of training had taught him that peace could be fragile. Inside, Anna prepared a small dinner for them. She hummed softly, the kitchen filled with the warmth of her care. David entered, setting down a small bag he had carried with him from town. It contained a few gifts, a book, and some treats. She looked up, surprised. "You went into town today?" "I did," he said. "I also spoke with some villagers. They will help keep an eye out. If the boys try anything, no one will let them get away." Anna nodded, feeling safe and protected. "Thank you, David. For everything." After dinner, they sat together on the porch again. The sky darkened, stars beginning to appear one by one. The farm was quiet except for the soft chirping of crickets. "I never thought I would see the farm like this again," Anna said softly. "It feels whole." David placed his arm around her shoulders. "It is whole because we faced the trouble together. Fear has passed. Strength has returned. And you have learned that courage is not just for soldiers or fighters, it is for anyone who refuses to give up." Anna leaned against him, feeling the steady strength of his presence. "I will never forget this lesson." David smiled. "And I will never let harm come to you again." This farm, our home, is safe. We have both fought for it. The night settled over the fields, peaceful and calm. The boys had been tested and humbled, and the farm had survived the shadows of cruelty and fear. Life would go on, simple and strong, with courage and trust as the foundation. Anna closed her eyes, resting her head on David's shoulder. The wind whispered through the wheat, carrying away the last traces of fear. The stars shone brightly above, and for the first time in a long while, the farm felt completely free. David looked at the horizon, silently promising that no shadow would ever threaten his home again. He had fought and won not just for his wife, but for peace and justice on the land he loved. And for Anna, the quiet farm girl, life returned to its gentle rhythm, filled with hope, strength, and the knowledge that she would never face fear alone. The farm was safe. The family was whole. And the quiet courage that had started it all had finally triumphed.